Here are 10 forgotten revolutions that almost changed history, but have often been overshadowed by more well-known events. Peasant Revolt of 1381, England. The Peasant Revolt of 1381, also known as the Great Revolt or Wat Tyler's Rebellion, was a widespread uprising in medieval England against oppressive feudal conditions and high taxes. Led by figures like Wat Tyler and John Ball, the revolt briefly threatened the power of the ruling elite before being violently suppressed. Taiping Rebellion, 1850–1864. China. The Taiping Rebellion was one of the deadliest civil wars in history, sparked by religious and social unrest in southern China. Led by Hong Xiuquan, who proclaimed himself the younger brother of Jesus Christ, the Taiping rebels sought to establish a utopian Christian kingdom known as the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The rebellion nearly overthrew the Qing dynasty but was ultimately defeated after more than a decade of intense fighting. Paris Commune, 1871, France. The Paris Commune was a radical socialist and revolutionary government that briefly governed Paris from March to May 1871. Born out of the Franco-Prussian War and the collapse of the Second French Empire, the Commune implemented progressive policies such as workers' control of production and separation of church and state. However, it was violently suppressed by the French government, leading to the deaths of thousands of communards. Easter Rising, 1916, Ireland. The Easter Rising was an armed insurrection in Dublin, Ireland, during Easter week in 1916. Organized by Irish Republicans seeking independence from British rule, the uprising aimed to establish an Irish Republic. Although initially unsuccessful and brutally suppressed by British forces, the Easter Rising galvanized support for Irish independence and paved the way for the establishment of the Irish Free State. Kronstadt Rebellion, 1921. Russia. The Kronstadt Rebellion was a major uprising by sailors and workers in the naval fortress of Kronstadt, Russia, against the Bolshevik government during the Russian Civil War. The rebels, disillusioned with Bolshevik policies and demanding greater political freedom and economic rights, briefly established a revolutionary commune before being crushed by the Red Army under the command of Leon Trotsky. Chittagong Uprising, 1930. India. The Chittagong Uprising, also known as the Chittagong Armory Raid, was an armed revolt against British colonial rule in Chittagong, Bengal, now Bangladesh, led by revolutionary nationalists like Surya Sen. The rebels attacked government installations and attempted to establish an independent Indian republic, but the uprising was suppressed by British forces. Hungarian Revolution of 1956, Hungary. The Hungarian Revolution of 1956 was a spontaneous nationwide uprising against Soviet-imposed policies and the oppressive communist regime in Hungary. The revolution initially enjoyed widespread popular support and briefly succeeded in establishing a more liberal and democratic government. However, Soviet intervention crushed the uprising, resulting in thousands of deaths and the reimposition of communist rule. May 1968 protests, France. The May 1968 protests in France were a series of student-led demonstrations, strikes, and occupations that paralyzed the country and nearly toppled the government of President Charles de Gaulle. Sparked by student grievances and dissatisfaction with social and political conditions, the protests grew into a mass movement demanding sweeping reforms and greater democracy. While the government ultimately survived, the protests had a profound impact on French society and culture. Guangju Uprising, 1980. South Korea. The Guangju Uprising was a popular revolt against military dictatorship in South Korea that took place in Gwangju in May 1980. Triggered by the imposition of martial law and the arrest of pro-democracy activists, the uprising saw ordinary citizens rise up against government forces, leading to violent clashes and a brutal crackdown. The Gwangju Uprising is remembered as a pivotal moment in South Korea's struggle for democracy. Gezi Park protests, 2013. Turkey. The Gezi Park protests began as a peaceful environmental demonstration against the planned redevelopment of Gezi Park in Istanbul, Turkey, in May 2013. However, the protests quickly evolved into a nationwide movement against government authoritarianism, police brutality, and restrictions on freedom of speech and assembly. While the government managed to suppress the protests, they highlighted widespread discontent and sparked debates about democracy and human rights in Turkey. These forgotten revolutions and uprisings demonstrate the resilience of human spirit and the enduring struggle for freedom, justice, and self-determination throughout history. While they may not have achieved their immediate goals, they left a lasting impact on societies and inspired future generations to continue the fight for change.